Gee, it sure is boring around here. Oh, I didn't see you guys. Howdy. As you've seen from the thumbnail, we have a guest for today's video. So give it up for Chad Peterson.
Yep, I'm back once again for another video. And it's a video related to the last video I collaborated with Nathan on, except this time, it focuses on only one character.
Indeed. And if you all remember my Bowser boss ranking from almost 3 years ago, you should at least have an idea of what this video will be. Well, that and the title probably gave it away, so I'll just say it. It's a ranking of the Ganon fights in the Zelda series.
Now, unlike Bowser, Ganon's boss fights have changed a lot more over the years. Even the Link to the Past clone boss fights have something different from each other aside from just improved graphics. Oh, and since there are way less Ganon fights, we can actually focus on all the Ganon fights that actually matter. Anyways, before we get to the ranking, we should lay down a few ground rules. Rule number 1, Ganon fights only. So Smash Bros., Cadence of Hyrule, Nintendo Land, the CDI games, and the OG Hyrule Warriors are not eligible for this list. Rule number 2, Yuga Ganon from Link Between Worlds does not count, since that is not Ganon, but rather Yuga's mind and some of his physical attributes fused with Ganon's body. We also won't count the Ganon Fae as the final fight of Link's Awakening, since that is Nightmare taking on Ganon's form, rather than Ganon himself. However, we will count Calamity Ganon from both Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity, since at the time of their release, they were considered a proper version of Ganon before Tears of the Kingdom revealed that they were just offshoots of the real deal.
With all that said, I hope you're ready for this countdown. Let the video begin. And the award for the worst Ganon fight in history goes to none other than...
You knew this one would be at the bottom of the list. As simple as the Zelda 1 final boss is, it at least tries to put up a fight. Meanwhile, you would actually need to try and lose to this fight.
I mean, sure, the Calamity Ganon fight is alright, minus the fact that if you play through the story, half of the boss's health is depleted, which decreases the challenge factor. But once we get to Dark Beast Ganon, the fight turns from alright to straight up insultingly easy. All you have to do in the Dark Beast Ganon phase is run circles around him, and shoot the yellow glowing spots on his body, and then shoot him once in the head once his final weak point is revealed. Oh, and the one attack this guy can launch out is so easy to avoid that the only way you're gonna get hit is if you just stand still and let it happen. The only redeeming qualities of this boss fight are the atmosphere and the design for Dark Beast Ganon. And even then, it's not enough to save this fight from being at the bottom of the list.
At least it can only go up from here. Now let's move on.
This boss fight is automatically an improvement over Dark Beast Ganon, since at least Ganon actually puts up a fight. And not to mention, the concept of Ganon being invisible throughout the entire fight is interesting to say the least.
That being said, due to the fact that this is a fight in an 8-bit game, that's where the praise ends. The fight was good for its time, but nowadays, the fight leaves a lot to be desired, since Ganon goes down in 4 sword strikes and 1 hit from the Silver Arrow. There's also the fact that Ganon only has 1 attack, that being to shoot fireballs at random positions. Also, the music isn't even unique to the fight, but rather it's the same music from the dungeon we just went through. Now, let's move on.
After completing Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages, we have the option to combine both game save data to get to the secret level. We then have 2 fights. One of them is with Twin Rova, so that fight is irrelevant to this list. However, after you beat Twin Rova, they sacrifice themselves in order to resurrect Ganon. That's the fight we're gonna focus on.
Ganon has several tricks up his sleeve. He can shoot fireballs from his mouth, swipe at you with his trident, and even charge energy from a massive fireball attack. Oh, and at a certain point, he'll even temporarily warp the room into a blue haze, which will invert your movement controls. He'll also be constantly teleporting after each attack, so watch out for that.
I'll give this fight credit for being decently creative, especially in the moment where Ganon reverses your controls. But aside from that, this Ganon fight is relatively short, especially if you just spam your sword attacks every time Ganon reappears. The fight is also less impressive than the upcoming boss fights, and probably has the least fitting boss theme of the bunch. Alright, time for our first Echoes of Wisdom Ganon fight. Now this one gets this low on the list because it's so easy and simplistic. Just dodge his trident attacks, and hit his electric orb back at him. And you can hit him with your sword as well. Just hit him a lot and he's defeated. And aside from the fact he does quite a bit of damage for our first boss, this fight isn't too special.
However, we gave this fight some slack since this is the first time in a Ganon appearance where he is not the final boss in some capacity, and he's not even the main villain either. In fact, this is the introductory boss to Echoes of Wisdom, before you even take on the role of Princess Zelda. So because of that, standards for this fight are lower than they would be if this fight was the final boss. This boss fight was the start of an iconic Ganon formula where Ganon would be teleporting around the arena while swinging his trident around and also shooting fireballs. And over time, Ganon will change his strategy in this fight, from the strategy I just mentioned, him ground pounding the arena to destroy the outer ring of the arena, and after this, Ganon will use the same strategy from Zelda 1, except this time you have to use the fire rod or lamp in order to restore the torches of the arena in order to see Ganon. After that, he will be stunned, and you'll shoot him with a silver arrow. Repeat this 4 times, and you win.
This fight is automatically an improvement over the previous fights we've seen so far, thanks to the fact Ganon actually changes his strategy over time in the fight. The music may be short, but it's decently epic and a little catchy. However, there is one major flaw. This is canonically the strongest version of Ganon, due to the fact he uses the complete Triforce. I know you can only do so much with SNES hardware, but the thing is, I would expect Ganon to use more powerful attacks and more impressive abilities, especially given how powerful this artifact is supposed to be. I suppose if you really want to have a hard time, you could always avoid the sword and tunic upgrades in the game, which will lead to your standard attacks doing nothing to him, which will force you to use charged attacks. You'll also need to avoid getting hit, because unless you get the red tunic in this game, Ganon's attack do a whopping 8 hearts of damage in a single hit. Although even if you do get the red tunic, he'll still do 2 hearts of damage in a single hit. So yeah, Link to the Past has a decent Ganon fight, but it could have been better. Hopefully if Nintendo makes a remake, they make this fight a little more challenging and bombastic.
Surprisingly enough, like we said before, Ganon is neither the main villain nor the final boss of Echoes of Wisdom. In fact, this game marks the 2nd time that Ganon has had the plot stolen from him by another villain. That being said, Ganon still has a 2nd fight in this game, and it's okay. I do like that he does take a fair amount of damage to beat, and he actually takes initiative to try and block things you or your echoes throw at him. For the most part, at least. He also uses the trident to summon fire bats and projectiles like the fight against him in The Link to the Past.
But there is a problem here. He's still too easy. I get that Ganon isn't the final boss in this game, but you could at least give him a more difficult fight, especially since he's the main villain of the franchise, even if he's not the villain of the game. Literally the only reason why we're not ranking this fight lower is because he's not the final boss. Him being too easy isn't as big of a problem as it would be if he was the final boss. But regardless, this game as a whole was not Ganon's finest hour, so let's move on.
Much like Link to the Past, this Ganon fight involves Ganon teleporting around the arena. Except this time, he'll summon lightning and send you to the Dark World to fight off some skeletons, and once you finish those guys off, you'll return to the arena. Once you deal enough damage, Ganon will change his strategy by throwing his trident around and teleporting around the arena all at once. He'll also seemingly reset the arena to the point where second phase begins sometimes. I'm not sure what he does at those points, but that's the idea I get from that.
After depleting his health, you'll free Zelda from Ganon's snare, and she'll charge an attack to imprison Ganon. Then Ganon will fire attacks that you need to bounce back at him, and above all, ensure that Ganon's attacks do not hit Zelda. After you do that, Zelda will launch her attack, which will allow you to shoot him with the bow, which will lead to Ganon being imprisoned within the Four Sword. With all that said, this fight is decent, even if it's a little confusing at points. Oh, and the music is pretty good. However, compared to the upcoming fights, this fight doesn't stand out much. Okay, before we move on, from here on out the Ganon fights really start to get good, and it's kinda hard to pick one over the other in most of these cases. So don't treat this as objective fact, this is all our own opinions. With all that said, let's continue the ranking, shall we? This Ganondorf fight is the first time the Gerudo King engages Link in a blade-to-blade fight. And while not as epic as what we'd see in the future, it serves as the baseline for future sword vs sword Ganon fights. Now the fact that Ganondorf actually adjusts his strategy as the fight progresses is actually pretty cool. And it shows how intelligent he is, even with Zelda helping you during the battle. Oh, and the music is great as well.
That being said, the other fights outdo this one in terms of either how difficult it is, a better design, the atmosphere, or personal preference. This one could be seen as questionable to include for some, as many people consider this game to be non-canon, and Nintendo themselves seem to have forgotten about it. However, this game is close enough to canon anyways that we decided to include the fight regardless.
Now getting into the design aspect. This guy looks like a fusion of Akuma, Ganondorf, and tidbits of Ghost Rider, and I'm all for it. The music is pretty great as well, and the warrior-style gameplay mixed with the Breath of the Wild mechanics works quite well for this boss fight. My main reason for not placing this fight any higher comes down to personal preference at the end of the day.
This is chronologically the first time Link and Ganondorf fight, and it's an instant classic. Designs for both the Ganondorf and Ganon forms are incredible, especially for the time, and the music tracks for both phases are absolutely iconic.
Plus, it carries a lot of weight story-wise. If you fail to defeat Ganondorf here, an entire alternate timeline is boring. That certainly helps raise the stakes for this fight. I also really like the atmosphere set during the Ganon phase, at least for the N64 version. Yes, you can barely see what's going on, but I feel like it adds to the tone of the fight, and makes Ganon feel all the more menacing. There is one problem though. The fight is just too easy. The Ganondorf phase, despite being memorable, is also a glorified tennis match if you really look at it. And as for the Ganon phase, while it is the best part of the fight, I do wish Ganon had more attacks and was a bit more capable of leaving you for dead.
Now, let's get to the bad stuff out of the way first. I am not a big fan of the boss fight with the second phase. It's not quite as fierce and epic as it should be, especially since it's meant to be a beast versus beast battle. The horse phase can also be a bit annoying at times. Even the 1v1 sword duel, while epic, is also a little bit too easy.
With all the bad stuff out of the way, let's discuss the good, which is everything else. The music in the other three phases, aside from the beast phase, are epic tracks. And the fact that the first phase is against a possessed and/or evil Zelda is an interesting concept that wasn't revisited much. The Beast Ganon phase has a couple ways to fight it, and the sword duel allows you to go all out with your sword skills. Assuming you don't cheat by using the fishing rod, that is. Though as Chad said, it is just too easy. Actually, now that I think about it, I guess I could also say the same about the rest of the bosses in Twilight Princess. But anyway, overall, this is a great fight. But if you thought this was the best Ganon fight, well... Now this is the best Ganon fight, bar none. The music in all the phases is great, especially in the second phase where you actually hear a reference to the Ocarina of Time boss theme. Ganondorf also plays as a reflection of you in terms of his attacks, along with a few of his own. And in the second half of the fight against the Demon King form, he can literally flurry rush your flurry rush. Just goes to show you how much of a goat Ganondorf is.
Plus, there's the fact that even in the Victory Lap final phase, the fight still manages to be an improvement over Breath of the Wild's Dark Beast Ganon fight. In fact, this whole final boss is an improvement over Breath of the Wild's final boss, and every other boss in that game in every single category. And no, we haven't changed our minds on Tears of the Kingdom. It's still better than Breath of the Wild in our opinion, and you can't convince us otherwise.
Overall, the next Ganon fight has a lot to live up to if Nintendo ever hopes of trying to match this fight, but hopefully Nintendo can deliver. So yeah, that's the Ganon ranking done and over with at the time this video releases. I know this isn't all of the Ganon fights ever made, but at least we got the Ganon fights that matter out of the way.
Although, if you insist on wanting to know our opinions on the other Ganon fights, I'll summon them up in rapid fire succession. All of the CDI Ganon fights are horrible. Nintendo Land's Ganon fight is subpar, but not outright terrible. Ganon's fight in Cadence of Hyrule is fine, but not my cup of coffee. Smash Ultimate's fight against Ganon is a good reference to the past Ganon fights at the time, and the OG Hyrule Warriors version is on par with the Wind Waker's boss fight against Ganondorf at least. Okay then, now we've discussed them all. With that said, see you next time.
Alright, now that those are out of the way, we are officially done with this video. The next one will most likely be my review on the Tom Hardy Venom trilogy, which is still in the script writing phase as of now. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya, chump.